Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So happy to be with you. This is our Viva Voce series. My name is Marquis, and I'm an artist impact coordinator here at ArtWorks. So happy to be your moderator tonight. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, ArtsWave, Ohio Arts Council, and Cincinnati for their ongoing support. So thank you. This Viva Voce series was introduced with the aim to host creative conversations to connect with artists who are producing groundbreaking works and to hear them speak about their artwork as well as current issues. So far, we've held discussions on art and social justice, art and voting, as well as a talk highlighting emerging local artists. You can find the recording of these talks on our website or on our YouTube channel. Tonight's conversation will be surrounding mental health and self-care in the arts. As some of us know, art can be a valuable tool to promote mental health, for raising awareness and advocating for those living with mental illnesses. And it can be also very therapeutic, decreasing negative emotions and helping to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. With the next statistics I want to share, I want us to reflect on what they mean to us and to give us a perspective of our current situation. 1 out of every 5 adults suffer from mental illness in a given year. And on top of that, 20% of our young people ages 13 to 18 also live with mental illnesses. Now, there are audience members of all ages joining tonight, and we want to create a safe space for transformative conversations surrounding these issues. We hope that you will join us in engaging in this conversation, both audience members and our panelists. Tonight we have 5 who will be speaking with us: Brent Billingsley, Ben Kaplan, Sanchez Jr, Tepe, and Kah Yangni. I'm so sorry if I messed up your last name. I got it? Okay, cool. They will be discussing their work, which supports positive self-image and mental health through art. On our agenda, just to run through a few housekeeping, we will first have each of the panelists introduce themselves and their work, discussing how their work aligns with the conversation. Then I'll ask a few general and individual questions to dive deeper. And after that, we will have time for those of you in the audience to ask questions for our panel. And to ask questions, you can either use the Q&A function to type in a question, or you can raise your hand to use your voice and say a direct question. We will also be recording this event, and it will be posted on our website to view. So to start us off, we have Tepe, an artist and designer who has used gameplay through her work. In 2018, Tipi partnered with ArtWorks to design a game that would start conversations about mental health to normalize this conversation among teens and young adults. Kate, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours to introduce yourself and share images and talk about how your work aligns with this conversation.
Hi, Marquis. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us. So my name is Tepe, grew up in Cincinnati. I'm really most interested in creating work that explores or is related to group and personal identities and how we express those identities. What I think is really interesting is often the expression of who we think we are happens through interpersonal relationships. But how we think about ourselves, whether that's through a racial lens, a gender lens, our cultural backgrounds and influences, our sexual orientation, those ideas about ourselves often kind of take a journey along with us and are influenced by our experiences. And often they are conscious or subconscious thoughts and stories and narratives that we have about ourselves. So I'm really interested in exploring that and in the social codes that come out of that with my work. My background, I studied fashion design and conceptually based art 100 years ago at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. while I was there, I had this really incredible experience of working with artists such as Nick Cave, but then also art educators like Rachel Harper and Susan Kuliak. All three of these professionals are really visionary in their field. And through having these experiences, I was really challenged about thinking about art as artifact and art as sort of being like a thing, when really art is quite alive and it's quite living. So after that, when I went to get my master's degree, I was really, again, sort of challenged with this idea of how can I, push beyond this dead object and create art as a living thing. And through the relationship with my dear friend Karina Meal, was exposed to social practice art and the idea that these objects or these artifacts can not only influence the environment like they do with installation works, but they can also be transformative to the people that are operating or existing within those spaces. And I really see social practice art as an opportunity to expand from object to space to human interaction. And through that, I'm trying to be mindful of of time. Through grad school, I had an incredible opportunity to build an artist collective with a lot of the other artists that I was engaged with in that space. And we decided to just start making as many shows as we could. And we would do them in garages or in people's backyards or, anywhere we could, we would try to have a show. And that's where I started to play around with the idea of games. So I'm going to share my screen just to kind of show you a little bit of the work that I made. And one second. Here we go. So one of the first games that I created was called the Offline Dating Game. And I think what's interesting is you can see in some of these early games how stuck I was on art as objects. So although this is a picture of folks engaging with the game, the pink table at the bottom corner and the pink chair, not only did I put this pressure on myself to make a card game, but I also had to make the furniture that the people played the game in and try to curate that space. So the offline dating game was trying to use internet adjectives to influence IRL conversations. And here I had an opportunity to activate or to perform this game at the CAC. In the center, that's Drew Klein, who's the performance curator there. And he had this he provided an incredible opportunity to play the game there as a performance piece. And again, you can see the furniture. I had to spray paint all the pieces. I don't know. I was still attached to this idea that like, okay, well, if I'm making art, then there has to be objects all around the space. I wanted to continue to challenge that. So I had an opportunity at the University of Dayton to create a larger scale to kind of blow the idea of a game up beyond just the table. I created an interactive experience where I encouraged the guests at this gallery to question their own ideas about themselves and their morality and how they show up in these spaces. So here we can see, I think there were about 27 of these panels where people could vote and agree with ideas or statements about themselves. Here, I made a scale. So there's sandbags within this scale, and the idea was that the community could judge itself, and you can kind of see in the corner that the scale that it's breaking from the weight of the sandbags, which I thought was really interesting. I made a series of card games for the the Cincinnati Art Museum, where the goal was to encourage folks to talk about Blackness and representation, Blackness in media, as well as Blackness in art. And here again, just exploring the idea of how games can help us have difficult conversations. And then that really brought me to, in terms of this vein of work, that really brought me to the piece that Marquis talked about, Hey, Let's Talk. I was really fortunate to collaborate with ArtWorks Youth Apprentices and Bethany Pell to execute this work. It was a collaborative design process, as well as the youth apprentices worked with me to build the questions involved in the game. But the concept, what I was really trying to do here was to encourage and empower school-aged kids to co-op democratic spaces or democratic support systems for their own mental health. So the game takes the unseen, challenging structure of conversations, structures that can be challenging for some folks. It puts it on the table. So all the kids have to do is opt in. They have to decide, okay, I want to participate in these conversations. Each card has different questions. The games play like the game of war, that familiar card game. And the idea is that through the use of these questions and the cards, students can become friends, get to know each other better, and really have vulnerable, honest conversations with each other. So I will stop sharing. I think that this work, to just go back to Marquis' point, we know, thanks to artists and activists before us, that the personal is very political. So by encouraging students to have these conversations, by democratizing sort of systems of what mental health support looks like, and empowering school-age kids to create those spaces for themselves, we know that this is something that in of itself is political, but it's also art. So.
Wow, excellent. Thank you, Kate, so much for sharing your work. I love your use of games to have difficult conversations with youth and young adults. That's amazing. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Brent Billingsley. Brent has developed his practice by working with youth in hospital settings. He's developed programs to support youth who are on extended stays to improve their experience and self-image through art. Brent, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about the work that you do in relation to this?
Sure. Kate, that was super dope. Holla at your boy. Fantastic. So my name is Brent Billingsley. I'm a artist. My journey started many moons ago when I used to work at Ford Motor Company, and I felt as if I was not utilizing my gifts. So I worked there for 14 years, and I made good money too. Like, to only have a high school degree, I made I was doing six figures a year, consistently, which is pretty good to just have a high school diploma. So I left for the ambiguity of art, and I knew some people who were artists who were broke as hell. So so I said, you know what, man, I had these talents and these gifts, I'm not using them, and I felt like I had my calling. I prayed about it, so I left this job where I was making really good money. Six figures is good money now. Sure, this was back in 2007. So I left. I went to art school at Miami University, and I felt like, hey, I still knew artists who were excellent, who personally had more talent than me, like this natural God-given talent, who were still broke. And I had a problem with, I got a problem not having no money and paying my bills. Because I like to eat, so I got a problem being hungry. You dig what I'm saying? So after I got my degree in art, my bachelor's degree, and while I was in school, I started working at different group homes and started working with kids a lot, which I've been doing my whole life anyway. Never got paid to do it, but it was something I was into. I said, you know what, this is what I'll do. I said, I'll combine my artistic talent with social services, and that's how I'll reach young people. So after I finished with my bachelor's, I got my master's in social work, and from UC. So in the process of getting my master's, I started working at Children's Hospital in psychiatry. So now I'm in psychiatry. I just started my degree, my master's. So right away, I'm using art right away, out the gate. So I'm in psychiatry. I'm not a practicing artist yet because my goal in life was never to be an artist. That was never I had that epiphany later after working for years in psychiatry. My goal was to say, okay, I want to use art to reach young people. I'm in psychiatry, and in the midst of me being in psychiatry, I noticed there was a gap in the mental health facilitation of what we did at the hospital because we are set up for 5 to 7 days of a stay of a psychiatric stay. And I work with kids who are suicidal, homicidal, self-harming, cutters, you name it. I see it on a regular basis, stuff made for TV movies on a regular basis. As far as the kids that I get, when they come see me, that means they have hit rock bottom. And they were staying there for 2 and 3 and 4 months. And the stay is planned for 5 to 7 days. But these kids didn't have any place to go. They were placement problems. People were giving them back up. People are like, maybe they were foster kids and they were being sent back to the system. So I developed a program, me and another behavioral health consultant, called the Length of Stay program. So this happened about 4 years ago. I've been there since 2013. So after a couple of years there, I said, hey, there's this gap in between what we're doing and what I'm noticing is the longer the kids are there, they're becoming more acute. So they're getting angry and upset because, and I would be too, you seeing kids coming and leaving, and you still there. And they're giving you the same treatment over and over and over. So we did a proposal at the hospital and they accepted it. So my program is called Length of Stay. So what happens now is I have the ability to be able to engage the kids artistically that are there past 10 days and our placement problems. So if you're a kid, so now so essentially what we've done is we've implemented we've implemented more processes to help the kids out, more interventions, I would say. And it's been fantastic. So it's grown. So I started a program about 4 years ago. So now they actually hired somebody to be over the whole program. And I do the artwork. I do art and poetry, by the way. We do music with the kids. They go see the bunnies and all that type of jazz out there at the petting zoo they got out there. But we have all these different modalities now that chimed in: music therapy, art therapy, play therapy. So now they're getting the different skill sets from the different practices if they're there longer than that. So I was doing that, and I was good with that, and I had no problem that being what I did. So I don't know, something happened at work. It's funny, because when you're artists, right? And this is I don't know about everybody else, but every time I step my game up, it's because somebody done pissed me off, right? Like when I go to another level, and it's because I'm getting, oh, you're doing so good, and we're so proud of you, and blah 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 blah. No, it's when I feel like I deserve something, I don't get it, or when somebody challenges me, or somebody does not give me something I know I deserve. I say, you know what, bet, holler at your boy, and I take myself up to another level. So that happened to me. It was some things that happened, and some things I was seeking as far as, and that I didn't get. So I said, okay, you know what? Let me start my own company. So started my own company, and then I took my talents outside the hospital. So now I'm doing community stuff heavily. I'm doing engagement stuff. Check this out. The hospital became one of my clients. I'll let you boy. So as I started progressing further using my talents, the hospital almost became my training ground because I'm in psychiatry. My kids is off the chain. Let me tell you. The worst kids y'all see, those are my babies right there. So I would do groups. I would do like art groups. I would test my material out on the kids I would work with. And if it worked with them, it would work somewhere else. So that was happening for a while. So I went even further and started another company. I felt like, this is good, because I was with somebody else with this company. So I started another one where I'm like the writer, the producer, and the star of the show. And I got grants through Artsway. I got the Black Lives Matter mural last year, and things have just been coming for me as an artist. But again, I'm a pretty good artist, but my superpower is what I do with youth and what I do with kids. And if you see my background, hold on, that's just mine. So everything in my studio is stuff I do at the hospital with kids, Jean-Michel Basquiat. And this is one of our spells, it's called Piece by Piece. Everything you see is done in pieces. So what I'll do is, as a metaphor for life, I'll get an image, I'll cut it up, and we'll say, hey, can you paint your piece? And all the kids are responsible for their one piece, like that corner is one piece. And everybody's responsible, and then you put them all together and you form a whole puzzle. So this is like one of the coup de grace that we do at the hospital, because everybody is always responsible for their one piece. And I call that one piece at a time. And that's like one of my, more popular, let me turn that back around, more popular things that I do with the kids anyway. And I mean, it's been great. I mean, it's been a blessing. I mean, I feel like, my company's doing fantastic. Right now, I got contracts with the Reds, with Butler Tech, with Children's Hospital. So it's almost as if, and I'm in Black Art Speaks, and it's like an all-star team of amazing artists. But again, art's not my superpower, is what I do with youth, and my attraction is my ability to be able to engage effectively, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's my soapbox. Holla at your boy.
It definitely does make sense. Thank you, Brent. I loved hearing your story and your work with youth and your glow up. Congrats for you. So let's transition to another speaker, Ben Kaplan. You're up next. Ben is an incoming resident physician in the Department of Family Medicine at the University of North Carolina Hospital in Chapel Hill. Outside of his clinical work, Ben is an avid illustrator and cartoonist who often uses his work to encourage conversations around mental health and social justice. Ben, the floor is yours to introduce yourself and share any images you'd like.
All right. Hey, everyone. Can y'all hear me? Nice. Okay, so thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am Ben Kaplan, he, him. First and foremost, I am the cousin of Sydney Fine of ArtWorks, a role model of mine since I was a wee babe, and I'm honored that she and all of y'all have invited me to be here this afternoon. This is really, really cool. So I am a newly minted family physician and amateur illustrator living in Chapel Hill now, but I originally grew up in New York City. And I have lived with anxiety and depression for probably since I was about 12 or 13. And art has always been a really important outlet for me, and really a means of confronting and making friends with my own emotional experience. So professionally speaking, I chose to go into medicine because my ultimate goal is to increase access to healthcare and to health. And I do that in three kind of major ways. One is by being a family physician and working in areas with communities who historically have low access to care. The second is advocating for policies that are targeted at structural racism and transphobia and other systems of oppression that shape these, these marked health disparities that we see in between communities. Because as Kate said earlier, the personal is political. And as long as health outcomes are so disparate between communities and groups of people, then healthcare is necessarily going to be a political process. And the third main approach is to combat stigma and spread important health-related information, particularly around mental health. So to these last 2 points, I talked briefly about how art has been a personal outlet for me, but now, particularly during the pandemic, I have kind of been reintroduced to art as this incredible platform that I have for reaching people and for starting conversations on our good mutual friend Instagram. So I can share some of the work that I've posted to my Instagram page, because that is really my main gig at this point, art-wise. So I will share my screen. Share. Okay, please work. Yes, okay. So these are a couple of illustrations that I uploaded basically around my own relationship to my brain and to anxiety, and reconciling being a person who wants to do a lot of things with being a person who sometimes just can't get out of bed in the morning. And both of those are equally me. And I have to not be any more proud of the me that, you know, goes to work and does an amazing job taking care of someone than I am of the person who is more limited in what I can do in a given day. So this little guy is me. I just can't do beard. I can't figure out how to do beards. So he's just kind of like an egghead. But people pick up on the resemblance. This is a cartoon that I made because I often don't like to feel tired. I get frustrated when I'm tired because I feel like it's a form of weakness. And it's not. It's absolutely not. It's just something that happens sometimes. So I made this for myself, and then I posted it, and a lot of people were like, hey, thanks. Because apparently that's a thing a lot of people feel. These are a couple of illustrations that are more explicitly geared towards various facets of mental health. The one on the left is an illustration I made to try to convey the concept that I have since learned in med school is called leaden paralysis, which is an atypical but still relatively common feature of depression, where you physically feel like your limbs are really heavy and like you've just lifted weights for hours, which I don't do. But that is how I thought of communicating that to people. And in the middle, there is, that's cartoon me in the lower left-hand corner, but that kind of amorphous blobby fella is a character that I came up with to kind of personify the feelings of anxiety that I have in an attempt to turn it into something that I could attach a sort of persona to, and then hate a little less and love a little bit more. And the last is something that I made for suicide prevention. And it is one of my favorite illustrations that I've made. These are some illustrations that I made surrounding white supremacy and to supplement the anti-racism efforts that have been happening all over the country, thankfully, and particularly in my experience with my hospital and my med school. And I wanted to start a conversation with people who had varying degrees of firsthand experience with racism and with structural oppression. And I find that often a good sort of common denominator for reaching a lot of people at once is just a cartoon. It's something you can look at and have a sort of visual experience of it that you can discuss with people that might then give way to a bigger, more important discussion about the thematic content of the work. And more recently, I've kind of had a full circle moment where I've started to use art in my own research and advocacy work. And I've started to put cartoons, not just on Instagram, but the thing on the left went into the Annals of Family Medicine, which is a doctor journal that has very complicated research papers in it. And there's just a cartoon in there that summarizes an article that I wrote about telehealth as a tool for expanding access to care in lower access communities. And the one on the right is a poster I made to encourage people to stay home early in the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was for an initiative run through the CDC, where they were collecting art by really anyone who wanted to contribute around public health messaging in the COVID-19 pandemic. So, and then it's been a long time dream of mine to make an enamel pin, and I finally did. And I racked my brains for hours, days, for what I wanted it to say. But the message I wound up with was, "It'll be okay," because that is something that I actually write on a lot of my own things. Like I've written it in books, I've written it on my notes for my organic chemistry class, I've written it everywhere, just because it's something that, you know, when I see it, I feel like this will not be the end, and I will be able to make it to the next step of whatever it is I'm doing. So I have now put that into a cartoon lemon and given it to lots of people, which is great. So yeah, those are the things I wanted to share. But yeah, I can't wait to talk with y'all and answer your questions. And the rest of you are just so cool. So wow, thank you for having me. I think that's it.
You're cool, Ben. Oh my goodness. I love it. Your openness for sharing yourself with us and normalizing not feeling your best and showing yourself grace when this happens. Thank you so much. So let's open the space for Harry. Harry Sanchez has used installations, prints, and other media to make artistic statements from the position of a racialized minority in the US. Sanchez earned his BFA from the University of Texas at El Paso in 2015 and his MFA from the University of Cincinnati in 2017. Harry, we're so happy to have you. Please tell us more about your experience.
Okay, just want to say thank you for having me here. This is very awesome. This is actually really cool for me because I've kind of been dealing with some mental health kind of things, especially since COVID hit. I've been on like these some medications for some stuff I've been doing. So this is also causing me some like feelings of just certain feelings I'll get into in the future. But it's always good for me to get into how I ended up in art and why I do some of the things that I do and how it helps me mentally with what I go through and what I've been through since I've been growing up. Okay, when I grew up, I was born in Texas, obviously, El Paso, Texas. I was born on the border. It's very hot now. Topic issue about immigration, all that stuff. Obviously, we had a mass shooting here about a year and a half ago at a Walmart. Which obviously I think at this point did not help with mental things around here for some people, especially when your own community is attacked for looking just the way that you do. So it's things like that have been building up over the years that have led to just things of anxiety. But I didn't grow up an artist. I think there was Brent, I believe said that he did not start as an artist. He started somewhere else. I was an athlete. I played football, I played baseball, I played sports. I didn't do art like everybody else did. I could draw. I understood that I have an ability to draw and recreate pictures that I see, but I never nurtured it. I played sports, I did all that kind of stuff. Eventually failed out of college. I'll just be honest, I failed out of college because I wasn't there to play football. I wasn't there for academics, I was there for football. So after that happened, it wasn't good mentally for me because I had been trained to be an athlete for like 2 decades, and for all of it to be taken away because of my stupidity, it hit me hard. And then after that, I ended up a couple years later becoming an alcoholic, and it led me to legal troubles. It led me to being involved in illicit drug activities and stuff like that. And I'm just being honest. I'm not trying to I always like to lay out who I am so that everybody knows exactly who I am and what I am. It just helps. So I'm not trying to be negative so that somebody thinks this is what you should do. No, don't do this. Don't do what I did. I was dumb. But it helped me get where I'm at. And that's the only reason I say it. Like sometimes the negativity that you go through, and this is what we're talking about, is sometimes paving your way through the negativity in order to end up in a place that's much better. Okay. And when Brent's saying his power is about working with the youth and having these programs, kind of mine is being able to relate to the youth, being able to talk to them and tell them, I've been through this. I've been where you are. I've been where you could possibly be. And sometimes when you have an open ear to them, you can tell them what you've been through, and they're more apt to talk to you than people who haven't been through the situation that they've been through. So I'm coming to this panel not as experienced as most of everybody here working in social justice. Like literally, your work is literally about that, or or your job is about that. What I'm doing is it's about experience based. It's about the experience I bring to the kids. Like when I worked at ArtWorks, I had such a positive experience from those kids because I could relate to them. When we talked about certain situations, they knew I had been there. When they talked about issues they were having, the way they felt, I think sometimes the best thing is just to have an ear for them and say, I understand, it's okay. Sometimes it's going to be hard. And you have to tell them it's not going to be okay for a little while. And I think that's also hard, is the truth. And going through this stuff really hit me mentally for a while. So when I was on probation, I started getting really down about life and what was happening, and I started making cakes. And I started making cakes and cupcakes. And feeding somebody gave me a really good feeling. Seeing somebody's reaction to a cupcake that they saw online or on Pinterest and then actually having it in front of them, it's like it gave me a feeling of healing that I never got through art until I found out that feeding people is kind of relational aesthetics. And the beautiful things that happen between people, the happiness, the joy, sometimes the sadness, the crying out of joy, the hugging, the healing through a hug, the holding, eating a cupcake, that's art. And Kate, art is alive. Art is alive. And I learned that the most beautiful thing sometimes about art is the things that happen between people. The conversations that Brent and I believe could have, because he seemed cool as hell. I believe that we could have conversations that would surpass any art we could make, because there's just a beauty in there. I've seen Kate on Instagram with her friends from ArtWorks out eating, having a good time with the most beautiful smiles. You can't make a piece of art more beautiful than the relationship you have with your friends. That's my opinion. That's the most beautiful thing I've experienced in art since I've got here. And what I've learned is working with children the way you guys do is satisfying. It feels good inside. Giving somebody a cupcake feels good. During one of my reviews, I made tacos for everybody. When I go to class, I make food for my students. And when I was working in ArtWorks, I would buy pizza for the kids. And you know what I didn't ask? Is there something wrong with you? Are you broke? Like, do you not have friends? I don't care. I just want to feed you. I want to make you happy. I want to make sure that you have an understanding that we're all equal. I'm bringing everybody in together so we can all eat. And for me, COVID sucked because a lot of the work I had planned and I wanted to do and stuff involved people coming together, people enjoying life, and people enjoying food. And I think it could probably be a little bit stronger now after COVID, because now I think we're going to start to appreciate the relationships that we have with each other a little bit more than what we had before. Because now when I go out and if I want to hug somebody, I think I'll appreciate that hug from my friend more than before. Before I might not have cared. Before it might have been, that's what you do. But now it's just important. Kind of like this. I have a small list. And one of them is on there. It talks about like the way you act if you were a dog. When your loved one come home, always run to greet them. Never pass up the opportunity for a joyride. Experience fresh air in the wind. Run, romp, play daily, stretch before rising. When you're happy, dance around and wag your entire body. Delight in the simple joy of a walk. Be faithful. There's little things like this that I found out are artwork when we do them together. There's beauty that happens. So it's things like that I want to express. When I work with the kids before COVID, I was working at a middle school around here. We were making cakes out of different materials, getting these kids to experience doing things in different ways and making them cupcakes and seeing the joy. So that's the kind of things that I really like to do when it comes to installation. It's been a little hard during COVID. Like I said, I was hit with some side effects of psychosis, feelings of self-worthlessness, depression. So I've also been hit with it like a lot of other people. So I also want to say that if anybody's out there that's having a hard time, it's okay. Talk to somebody, even if it's only one person. Talk to them. If you play a video game online and that's who you talk to, like that's your friend online, talk to them. If you're here and you have somebody that you know that you feel is going through mental issues, talk to them. Be there for them. That's the biggest things I want to say about this. Is just through experience, be there for these people. But let me just show you a couple. Sometimes I talk a lot because I'm trying to get all this stuff in real quick. But let me just show.
Hey, Harry, do you think we can give Kah some time to speak too?
Yeah,
We
I'm
can
sorry.
show some images after.
I didn't know. I tried to
Yeah.
get to the images, but I was just kind of rambling about the reason why I wanted to talk about this. But no, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Your words were powerful, and I believe they really made an impact. They made an impact for me. I felt them, and I believe that's the same for the audience too. Words to live by. Thank you for sharing. For speaking your truth. It was not negative. It was real. It's good to hear that you've had a great experience with this too.
Yeah, there's also like kind of like it's hard for Hispanic males in my culture to admit almost a sense of weakness and something's wrong. So I'm Hispanic, I'm male. It's okay to say I need help and something's wrong with me. And I'm just gonna go ahead and let it there. I'm sorry I rambled. I'm sorry I didn't mean. I usually can't talk for 8 minutes. I usually run out of breath.
But no, it's okay. It's okay. Well, last but definitely not least, I'd like to welcome Kah Yangni. Kah is an illustrator and muralist living in Philadelphia. They make heartfelt art about justice, queerness, and joy. Their art appears in all kinds of places: bus shelters, murals, reports, t-shirts, billboards, and magazines. Their art is also in the permanent collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Kah, thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much for, everything you said, Harry, was awesome. I definitely was like, oh my heart. It's like really good to hear from people that are more okay with like, it's just like not always being okay. But yeah, I'm Kah. I'm an illustrator muralist. I live in Philly. I grew up in like Houston and Minnesota, but came here a couple of years ago. And my art is focused on either like queerness or self-acceptance. I like a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people like definitely just started drawing as a kid. I had a dad who was like really terrible and abusive. And I would draw, like I would just like go to my room and either like read like Harry Potter and like fantasy books and like escape into books or escape into drawing. Like those are my two tools that I always used. And I used like drawing and writing and reading as a way either to like take a break and like go into a fantasy world where like it was like a future world and like things were totally different and exciting and beautiful, or like draw things to help me like cope with my feelings and like figure out what I was feeling, like figure out what I thought. And so like when I became an adult and was like out there working and like was working within the arts, I just didn't know like what within art I wanted to do. I saw that there was this need for like art about being queer and like art about social justice that was like positive, that would make people feel good about these experiences. Like I think a lot of people, I don't know, there's just so much, it's like speaking as a trans person, like there is a lot of like depression and sadness and like people committing suicide because like it's so hard. And like our community struggles in a lot of ways. And I knew from my childhood how to like be relentlessly positive and like future oriented and into fantasizing as a way to like make myself better and soothe myself. And so when I made illustrations about like why I thought it was like really awesome to be queer or like ways to accept yourself, I found like they resonated and I can tell that they were what people really needed. Like I was one illustrator of many that did this thing called Trans Day of Resilience that happens every year. It's like an event in November that just is a day that people come together to celebrate like the resilience of trans people. And like this nonprofit like hired a bunch of queer and trans artists from all over the country to like make art about it as like kind of like a pep, like really positive art about the trans experience. And I did it. And like I saw like people from all over the world like writing in languages I didn't understand under like my art on Instagram and stuff, and like people talking about how it made them cry, people talking about how it made them feel better about themselves. And I was like, okay, like this is what I can do. So I've just been trying, like I still have like depression and anxiety stuff, and like I still struggle, and I don't think like every day I'm like super confident or have like the world's best mental health, but I know like as I make this art to like help myself, like I know I can also help other people and like do my little piece to like pull my community forward. So like that's what motivates me. And I just wanted to show like some stuff I've made. And where are you, slideshow? There you go. Cool. Okay, let's go to the top. That's not this one. That's the top. Okay, 1 second. I'm arriving at the slideshow. Cool. So yeah, this is like some of my art. I love making, like a lot of the art that I make ends up being posters, but sometimes I get to do magazine stuff or like make murals or do stuff that goes on bus shelters. So that's what all this stuff is. This piece at the top left is the piece I was just talking about for Trans Day of Resilience. But this is some of the other stuff that I've made over the last like year or two. Yeah, that's a close-up of the poster. I like, yeah, I think I see myself as like trying to be somebody that's like a soothing presence for people like me, like other people that care about social justice or like are really trying to make the world a better place. I think a lot of us deal with like dark feelings and sadness and like disappointment with the way that the world is. And so I think this community really, like, I feel like I can see that like a lot of us like struggle with a lot of despair. And so if I can make like really positive visions of like us actually winning some of the stuff that we're fighting for, like our lives being better, like that will help people. So I make work like that. This is like, this was for a program in New York City that serves queer people. It's like a queer health center. But I just got asked to do art that shows like queer life in New York City. This is a mural that I made in July, like right after George Floyd happened. And I wanted to make something that like Black and brown people in my old neighborhood of like Olneyville in Providence would see and would feel better. And it's based on the lyrics of Solange, who did like this one song that's like, don't let anybody steal your magic. And so I just like took that lyric and like put it on a wall for people to see like at that time. That's my friend helping me with it. That's like the same art from earlier. I've been like really trying to like take my art that I just like make on a piece of paper or like make for Instagram or something like that, and like trying to get it out in the world where it can be seen by people and like how people that don't know me. So this is a really good example of like the stuff I'm trying to do lately, like make it more public. So this is like a billboard that was like one of a bunch of billboards that happened all over the country that were around the topic of trans people being sacred. I made this one and I asked for my billboard to be in Philly. It was really cool because I saw people sharing it, and like somebody shared it and was like, I saw this with my oldest trans friend in Philly and like I wanted to cry. Like, and I was like, oh, like I'm making something that's like, you know, somebody could see that who's having like a really shitty day. Like, so I'm excited to like make things that like make people feel better, like doing my best. Yeah. And this is another one, like this is a piece that I made this year after like this, I don't know if everybody knows about it, but there's been like a giant wave of like anti-trans bills like all over the country right now, like attacking trans kids and like trying to make people not be able to play sports and stuff like that. And somebody emailed me and was like, I feel like the trans community needs uplifting art right now. Like people are really sad. And they sent me this quote to like make art of it. So I just did it. And like, yeah, it's really cool to be able to make something to help my community when people are like really sad. Yeah, so that's me. That's the art that I make. It's either like trying to uplift myself or like trying to uplift other people, or yeah, trying to uplift my communities through trying to uplift myself. So that's me. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, Kah. Your work definitely is inspiring. So I feel like you're very successful in your goal of making inspiring work and for making people feel better about themselves. It's incredible. And I love your use of quotes and affirmations, powerful statements. Very nice, like Harry says. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on some of these questions. Let's start with some general questions. If you'd like to answer, feel free to just speak on the topic and make space and room for each other to speak as well. So let's start with a very open question. What does the relationship between mental health, self-care, and art mean to you?
Is there anybody start talking? Is that like an open question?
You go.
Am I there?
Yes, it is.
No, I'm just asking. We just having a conversation right now, like back and forth.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, so what's major, right? Is self-care is like important, man. Like my boy H Sandy was talking about. You have to be, man, very aware. You know, one of the first things I do a thing called Gone 60 Seconds. I teach cultural competence. And the first thing you have to recognize is, how am I feeling? Because if you out of whack, you ain't teaching nobody jack, you dig? So you have to be very, very aware. I tell people, I said, well, when did your shift start, cuz? Oh man, I said, no. When did your shift started? You up in the morning, if you having a bad day and your polish ain't crispy, you bringing that stuff to work with you. And the kid, and trust me, my kids can tell. My kids know. And they'll be like, what's wrong with you?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So you got to be, when you working with my population, you have to be on point every day. And you have to really check yourself. But sometimes if you feel in a certain kind of way, it can't reflect when you at work, because they're looking at you. You have to be that light. And I ain't saying fake it till you make it, but I'm saying learn, get some coping skills. Like my man Sanchez said, find out what makes you happy. So for me, I found out what makes me happy. So Japanese anime and whatever I can have to put hot sauce on it. You dig what I'm saying? So what I do is I make sure I saturate myself with things that make me happy, because I don't want to be at baseline. I want to be, in preventive maintenance. I don't want to be where I'm good. I want to be great. So if something happens to you when you're doing self-care, our problem is we're always in damage control, right? And that's when your car done locked up, you need a new engine. But if you're doing preventive maintenance on yourself, then if something happens that day, sometimes you be having such a good day that somebody will cut you off. Oh, you ain't gonna mess up my day. I'm having such a good day. You ain't gonna jack me up today. And that's how we have to be, especially in my field, because if you're not careful, some of those stories that remind you of yourself will attack you and will drag you back to a place where you thought you were delivered from, and I use art, and it's something about art that just crosses cultures and genders and orientations. And I'm not talking about what I think. I'm in a situation where it is evidence-based practice. So it works. And knowing yourself is like the most important thing you could do for it. If that makes sense. Holla at your boy.
Brent, Marquis, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna pass it off to see if anyone else wanted to speak. Yeah, go ahead.
Brent, I love what you said about art being this practice. And I think it's really, I think art is a very human action. Like we always think of the object, but art is this really human action. And I think we all need a safe space where we can explore, be creative, be curious, express ourselves. And that really is what art is. I think oftentimes like we sort of separate art from its connection to the human, but human beings have been in this action of art making from the beginning. So it's a very core and essential part of how we discover ourselves and express ourselves and then share who we are with one another.
Yeah, if I could just say that, yeah, to me also, like there's an all-encompassing aspect of it for me, because sometimes just like sometimes if I'm having a stressed out day or something, I might not come to the studio to specifically make an art piece. I might come to grind stones for lithography. So I come just to work out some energy, but I'm still here in the studio doing my thing, getting that energy out, getting the thoughts, and just kind of working through what I'm feeling by grinding out the stone for like 40, 50 minutes, an hour, and just getting all that energy out. And you get this sense of relief physically when I'm going through that. But then again, when I make a print and I pull that paper, holy shit, I get that same feeling of like, yes, like this is what I've been working on for 3 damn days and it worked. Like when that kind of stuff happened, it's also a beautiful thing. So like making that, it heals you internally, it heals you mentally, physically, like pulling that print, making that piece of art, I think is all it, there's something very, very, very positively rewarding that sometimes we just don't get from like eating a cheeseburger or eating a piece of pizza. You know, it's just not the same. And for me, it's a very, very strong feeling of accomplishment that mentally helps me out.
Awesome. Anyone else want to speak on that? Okay. Yeah, I love that. The different ways, but it's still all interconnected in the expression and the outlet and the release of creating something, producing something. But sometimes it's not even just about the product, but the process. So my next question, what do you see as the biggest gap where arts could be integrated as a tool for healing? So maybe that's thinking about where we are now versus where we could be, how we can fill that gap.
I'm sorry, can you ask that question one more time? My son just came in. I didn't hear it. That's my son right there.
No worries. So what do you see as the biggest gap between where we are now and where arts could be used as a tool for healing?
I've been thinking about that question a lot because I think there is one way in which art kind of figures into medicine and into clinical care, which is art therapy, which is really powerful and an invaluable tool. But I also think there is room for bringing art into educational spaces and into clinical spaces as a means of reflecting on different human experiences and building empathy and building recognition of everyone around you, every single person you see on the street that comes into and out of your clinical space, you know, as a person with an emotional experience that is as complex and as meaningful as your own. Because I think certainly where healthcare goes south is getting too siloed in a lot of ways, and is so often we see doctors or clinicians seeing 20, 30 people in a day, and never really having time and space to make a meaningful connection with that person as a person. That disconnect is only exacerbated by identity politics, which are extremely real and have been demonstrated across multiple, trials and studies to have negative impacts on patient care, and on health outcomes. We've seen implicit bias. We've seen how interpersonal and structural racism and transphobia and and misogyny and homophobia impact clinical care and access to health. And I think a lot of what art could be doing in the context of medicine is building that sense of empathy, that sense that I am caring for every person I'm caring for as a whole person, even if they don't look like me, even if their experiences don't match up with my own. And just to build that sort of curiosity and humility. You know, I have a good friend who organized an event at the Kaplan Art Museum, which is the museum in Chapel Hill that's by UNC Hospital, where she had medical students and clinicians look at a series of artworks, including one by Kara Walker, a series of her paper cutouts, and just to talk about race and racism and how experiences of racism shape health and illness. And it was only through that medium, through having that concrete yet living thing in front of all of us that we were sharing, that dialogue could actually come to the surface. Without that sort of scaffold to hold on to, the conversation I don't think could have happened. So that was a really long answer, but I think that's just an awesome and super, super important question.
Yeah, no, just wanted to give a little space if anyone wanted to add on to that. But I think that really did touch on a lot, especially the empathy and art education to even use as advocacy, as a form of art therapy. Like it runs hand in hand. It's like an intersectionality. I love that so much. Harry, you rose your hand.
Was kind of an accident, but yeah, it's I didn't know, man. I meant to hit unmute, but I don't know how I raised my hand. But I sometimes, like, I think, like I said, for me personally, it sometimes there's, like I said, there's stigma in my community about asking for help, and I think sometimes that ends up being a roadblock for us, as well as like funding for art, much less art therapy for like students and stuff. And that's I mean, that kind of stuff, I feel it's like it requires like action throughout the community to understand how important art therapy is. It's not like just going and painting pictures and that kind of stuff. So I think there's a little bit of gap of maybe getting other people to understand how important art therapy can be for kids, or even for teens who are going through certain kind of things, maybe in high school, that are having issues, that have identity issues. They might be trans, they might be queer, they might have some kind of thing going on internally that they can't express outside, that causes internal issues. And I think sometimes it's just getting that information and getting it out there for people to understand that there's ways that they can address it through art. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not the same kind of answer that the doctor gave. I wish I could have gave it so eloquently, but it's just basically I feel like there's a gap for us in trying to get them there to understand how important art can be in my community. I wish we had the same art community like we do in Cincinnati. They have a lot of really good things. They have a lot of good programs. They get to the kids early. And that's something that I wish we had here more of, because I think when you can get to the kids early, it definitely helps them to understand how they can express themselves through art, which would mentally help them a lot further down the road, I believe.
Yeah, I think I'm along the same lines as you. Like, I feel maybe a little nervous to, like, I don't have the medical perspective, but I know, like, my first thought when you ask the question is like, oh my God, like no one's even doing art classes in schools anymore. We're on level 1.
Yeah.
I'm listening to what Brennan's saying. I'm like, Brennan's probably all these kids' only art educator that they know, like, period. So yeah. I mean, we're still, I'm like, we're on level 1. Like, we need basic we need art classes in schools, period. Like, I think people don't see it as a tool because they don't know it. And it's like being systematically taken away from them. I think it's on purpose personally, but yeah.
Kai, I think you bring up a really good point, and along with like Harry and Ben, I think it's really important to understand that, not to be like too political, but we live within a capitalist system. The system that we live in, the water that we swim in, is a capitalist one. And so when you are in a capitalist system, resources and attention go to labor output and profit. And so you can see over time that art has been defunded, education has been defunded, healthcare is now privatized, which means that they need to then focus on their own profits as well. The challenge with the art, and I love what Ben was talking about in terms of mental health, humans, like, we're not machines. So your mental health outcomes may not be congruent with a system that requires you to get back into a labor system. You may need time and space. Individual communities can organize and rally along individual like health outcomes or individual needs, whether that's sickle cell, whether that's, I think Ben talked about the AIDS crisis in the 90s with one of his pieces. Like, individual communities can rally. The Black community certainly rallies, Hispanic community certainly rally, but that's exhausting. It requires a lot of personal resources from disenfranchised communities. So when you are systemically removing resources or preventing those communities from gaining access, you have what we have now. So art, I think, is really crucial. And I think artists are really instrumental members of communities, because we, like, higher work. I cannot believe, like, all this beautiful work on these billboards, like, we can amplify the voices and the needs of the folks within our own communities. And that is a very powerful tool. It's a very important tool. And I think, to your point, that's why it is hard oftentimes to get funding, because there is so much power in the ability to amplify those voices.
RT. Like, art is a radical tool. It's a tool for anti-oppression. It can be a tool for anti-capitalism. It's a tool for dismantling oppressive systems. So I think I think it's extremely intentional that schools are being defunded in their arts education, because that's one of the greatest threats to the system that is upholding these disparities, is the tool to make art and to express radical thought and radical action through art. That's like the most threatening thing to the capital E establishment.
Yeah, just going off that, it's really funny because, like, people can make a really strong stance, and they could do powerful. They could let voices be heard with art, and it's really funny sometimes when I go to Facebook and I go to the comment section about like some kind of art piece or something, and then there's always ignorant people like, well, why do they have to make a political statement? Art has never been political. It's like, oh my God, you absolutely know jack shit about art history and the way people have used art. Or like, you must have never seen any Goya prints. It's like, you guys are hilarious to think that artists never use a platform to be political or to take a stance against power. It's funny. It's just hilarious to see stuff like that. Like, art is very strong, and art can be powerful for a long time. And like you guys say, it's just the only people who don't like it are the people that have to worry about the power of art.
Snapping all day long to what all of you said. Yes. And like, art not being political, but like, it's driven political movements and social movements. Like, going off of what we were kind of saying about art education, ArtWorks works with apprentices ages 14 to 21, as most of you know. What would you like our young adults to know about dealing with mental health and how they can support and advocate each other through art?
I think that so since I work in mental health and I deal with that on a regular basis, and I work with teens outside the hospital a lot, and it's a different kind of beast when they come to you and you see them in abundance, right? Like out in the community, you'll see some people have some issues, they'll be in the corner, yada yada yada. But it's different when they come to you and their arms are extremely cut up. I'm talking about this fought with Wolverine and Freddy Krueger, and these are like permanent scars. And they're looking for something tangible. They're not looking for religion. They're not looking for anything. They're looking for something to get them to the next day, right? And oftentimes, man, art, it does it. And I'm telling you, on everything that I love, that I've seen it, and with my eyes, as far as it's all about keeping those hands busy. So in psychiatry, we're training dialectical behavior therapy. So some of the skill sets, you have a clear picture, on-track thinking, on-track action, safety plan, new me activities. And this is skip past a couple of skill sets. To get to the new me activities, you have like the coping skills, and they're indicative of focus, fun, and distraction. And what I do is I give kids projects. I don't say, hey, go do this. No, I'll give you something you have to focus on. You have to do something for a limited amount of time or extended amount of time. And when you're smiling, when you're happy, man, it's hard to be upset. It's hard to be, mad when you're like smiling, especially like my boy Harry said, when you've accomplished an art project, man, you feel good about it. It's like that refrigerator work, right? You say, hey, put this bad boy on the refrigerator, son. Let's go for real, for real. Because when you've accomplished something, that feels fantastic. And you give them something within their means that they can actually do, because you never want to put something out of their reach, because when you're dealing with somebody who may be psychologically unstable, don't ever have them something that they can't reach, because it'll make it worse. So you always stress a goal, and you want them to establish that goal for themselves that they know they can accomplish, and artistically, but always challenge them though. And I would say, man, find those things that keep you busy artistically. And I'm a sucker. I think everybody's an artist. I don't care if you're a dentist. I don't care if you paint lines in the street. I don't care if you cut grass. I don't care what you do. You can do it artistically. Because I believe in the ubiquity of art. And laying back what you guys said earlier, yeah, man, they try to take away art, man, because art is everywhere, and that's how you silence the people. You keep people from reading books. You take away their creativity, right? So they're trying to silence the powers that be from overcoming. And just to watch it in real time and giving them stuff, my advice based off of evidence-based practice, what's that, as evidence bias, what they say, is keeping those hands and those thoughts busy. Because I deal with what's called maladaptive ideations, which means it's a lot of negative thoughts. And people, I deal with parents and stuff, and they try to tell the kids, well, you shouldn't think like that. You ain't never got the right to tell somebody how they should think. That's madness. You ain't never got the right to do that. Now, as you get older, you can become wiser, your thinking will change and you'll make better decisions. But what you can't control are your actions. You can't control that, because those thoughts are going to come. But what you have to do is fill those thoughts with something else. And oftentimes those art projects or keeping those hands busy or doing something, it helps. It works. Does it cure it? I mean, I don't say that. Art doesn't fix. We're not here to fix anything. But man, I promise you, it will make it better. That's my soapbox. Holla at your boy.
Yeah, I like your point on art not being a cure, but more like medicinal medicine. Does anyone else want to speak on what you want young artists to know?
I had the pleasure of working at ArtWorks for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And I was really blown away how diverse a community that ArtWorks has been able to build. And it's just been really, it was very touching to see how supportive that community was for each other. I think, you know, when I received the proposal to make the game, I had not yet worked at ArtWorks. And then after I received the proposal, I had the opportunity to work full-time with ArtWorks. I think that young artists should know that there's certain aspects of community that I think we all take advantage of and kind of maybe forget how important it is. But spending time with your friends or signing up for summer programs and just showing up and putting yourself out there is, it's really powerful, because that's how you build support systems. And I think sometimes you can think maybe I'm not super close with a person, or I don't know a person, but showing up, participating, being in these spaces, being vulnerable in these spaces, you will build a support system. And I think it can be as organic and easy as, I mean, it's not easy to always show up. Like, I think all of us, we have hard days, but it can be as simple as that. So I think for young artists, that's what I would say, continue to practice. I know whenever I am going through something, I'll talk to my dad, who is an artist, and his number one advice for me always, no matter what I'm telling him is going on in my life, is, oh, don't worry about that. You need to focus on your art, on your art making. That's all he says every time I talk to him about whatever it is. But I think there is a lot of truth in that. So kudos to ArtWorks for building such a strong community and bringing us all together, but also, like, that's how you do it. That's how you support each other.
Yeah, I think what I'll make it quick, because I can ramble and I don't mean to, but one thing I will say is stay strong. For any kids to stay strong. If something's going on, just like they say in Philly with 76ers, trust the process. They might not win the championship, but trust the process. Okay, we've been there. Sometimes things go hard, sometimes they go smooth. But the point is to stay on the road, trust the process, trust that things are going to be there, and to know that if you work at ArtWorks, somebody's there for you. If you need to talk to somebody about anything, somebody's there for you. If you're an artist, a young teenage artist, and you know an older adult artist, do not ever hesitate to talk to them. Artists are very understanding people. This is what I've come to learn. Our community is really beautiful for understanding and helping each other out. And if there's one thing I would want a younger artist to know, it's to just feel that openness for your art community, from people who are older than you, who will be there to support you for anything, because they will, and to trust the process. Stay strong. That's it. That was even kind of long.
No, that was great. Now, if anyone in the audience has questions, definitely pop those in the Q&A function chat box, or raise your hand and we can pass you the mic so you can vocally ask a question. Or if the panelists have questions for each other, feel free to ask too.
I'm curious, like, for people that work directly with kids and like directly with populations, like what are your experiences if you struggle with mental health issues with like helping other people? Because I think in my time as an art educator, I totally did notice the thing that you were talking about like the kids totally pick up on your sadness. And I wondered sometimes if I was like low key, like messing the kids up, or I don't know, not helping them in the way that I could. And I would love to hear from people more about their journey as people who have these issues, serving people with issues, and like making sure you're like really helping people. If people want to talk about it, that's
No, I would say that, I work in mental health, and I have coworkers who have to take leave of absence and get their own, they have to go check themselves in somewhere. So it's very important, again, like I said earlier, where am I at? How do you feel? Part of the conflict cycle is, how do I feel? How does the kid feel? How is the environment affecting the kid, and how do I best proceed? But that first question is, how do I feel? And being honest, I think a lot of times, especially in the Black community, Latino community, like my boy Sanchez said, there's a stigma. Black folks, we got it too. We got mental health. We usually just either smoke it or drink it away. You dig what I'm saying? So there's this huge lack of acknowledgement for depression. And I'm not talking about being sad. I work with clinical depression. It ain't being sad, bro. You ain't had no bad day. Depression is heavy, it's deep. It goes heavier than I'm having a bad day, or even a bad week, or a bad month. You're having a bad life. And sometimes you cannot get out of that funk. And those negative thoughts will saturate you. And I would say that being honest with where you are and being mindful and knowing that if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, what am I going to be any good? And oftentimes, you still can be. I mean, you can still be a light. You can still, pick yourself up and do the things that you need to do, because somebody has to. And oftentimes, being transparent helps, because, but not just being transparent with who you are, but hey, you tell the kids, say, look, I'm here with you. I ain't perfect. I was about to smack somebody yesterday, 100, for real. So if you're honest with the kid that you're working with, that, look, man, perfection is for suckers. That ain't never happened for real. So being honest with yourself about where you are, being honest with your population about what you maybe done. Now, you ain't got to tell them all your business. You dig what I'm saying? Don't tell them all what's happening, but being honest with where you are, so they know, so that it's with, if a kid is picking out your faults that you don't want them to see, you don't want that to happen. You want to be transparent enough to be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going through something too. Next question. Let's keep it moving. If that makes sense.
We have a question in the chat by Linda. How can you help kids find their creative path, like writing, poetry, sewing, knitting, painting, sculpting, etc., finding their best form of expression, especially since schools are failing in this area?
I'm gonna say something on this real quick, just because I work with a wide range of mediums. I do painting, I do printmaking, I do sculpture, I do cake decorating, I do drawing. So my advice is to just do it. Just do all of them. Write, do poetry, sew, knit, do it all. Anything to keep, just like I said, that keeps your hand busy. Anything that keeps your hands busy and your mind off of negative thoughts, I think are best. You will find out what you like doing in the process of doing it. When you start sewing, you start saying, I don't really like this. Okay, so let me try this. And then you try writing, or you go to painting, and then you go to knitting. That's what I would have to say. But definitely start with, if you can't get it in school, what materials do you have that you can work with? I started doing balance sculptures because I found out that that's actually art. Before that, I used to balance chairs. I used to balance objects on top of other objects, and I found out that that's sculptures. So work with what I would just encourage them to work with anything that they have. If the school doesn't have, if the school's failing in that area, and you don't want to stop doing it, well, then keep doing it, and work with any medium that you want, anything that you find interesting. Even if you only do it for 5 minutes and don't like it, at least try it. That's what I got to say.
Um, ArtWorks, I believe, can get you some more information on the Black Art Speaks event happening next week. But if you all have any last remarks before closing, definitely share those with them. All right. Well, thank you so much, panelists. You all. Whoop. Go ahead, Brent.
I'll say I had the flyer, but I'm old, right? So I barely know how to use this telephone as I had my son had to set this up for me before we started today. So I have the flyer for the whole thing for Black Art Speaks that starts on Saturday. So it starts Saturday and then goes all the way to next Saturday. And I had that flyer because I'm in Black Art Speaks, and I can like shoot it to art. I mean, I don't know. I can shoot it to you guys some kind of way. I don't know how currently, because I can take pictures. I can get on Instagram barely, holla at your boy, and I can like. And this was a challenge right here. I don't know how, So yeah, but I do have the flyer that has the daily events where we're painting on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And there also will be like entertainment going on all those days too. So not only are we painting on those days, we have entertainment all those days too. And then we're having the unveiling is next Friday, the ribbon cutting, and then we're having a block party, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. So yeah, but some kind of way I can get you guys the flyer.
Yeah.
I have it on I can text it to somebody. If somebody, gave me a number to text it to, I could do that.
Okay, and we just got a link in the chat too. But thank you so much. Yeah, sounds like a great event, a great week of events happening. Be there, be square. Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for opening up and sharing their experience with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We appreciate all of your participation to make this event possible. If you're interested in ordering the Hey Let's Talk card game designed by Kate, check out the link in the chat or pay us a visit at our new office in Walnut Hills. We also have our youth gallery open too. Another Viva Voce event will be happening September 9th from 5:30 to 7. Stay tuned for more details. We also want to share the mental health hotline numbers if you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues. We hope that you will consider reaching out for help or letting someone know if you're struggling. I believe those will be posted in the chat. If not, I can also, there we go, thank you. But awesome, it was a great evening, a great discussion. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.